What could genuinely happen is 7 English clubs will be competing in the 2025-2026 Champions League. And here's how. The top 5 in the Premier League qualify for the Champions League. Then, let's say Tottenham or Manchester United win the Europa League. That takes us up to 6 places, right? Then let's also say that either Manchester City or Aston Villa are not in the Premier League top 5, and yet they go on and win the Champions League. Probably, I think City are going to finish in the top 5. So let's say Aston Villa. So if Aston Villa win the Champions League and finish 8th in the Premier League, if Tottenham win the Europa League and finish 10th in the Premier League, and plus the top 5, we could end up with 7 English clubs in the Champions League next season. Thoughts, Ollie?
So I'm so happy for clubs like Bournemouth and Forest to be as high up they are in the table right now. And genuinely would like them to stay exactly where they are or even higher until the end of the season, because I think it's a better story, it's a better narrative, and it shows the way that smaller clubs in football, or maybe should we say less competitive clubs in football, can break into the top 4, top 6 and gives hope for a lot of other teams. However, there was a commentator made a note this week of Bournemouth in the Champions League. You know, that would be fantastic. What an achievement. It's the same as qualifying through the league phase in the Champions League and getting into the knockout stages this year. It's not really an achievement. Like, if it's obviously qualifying,
I mean, it is.
Bournemouth
It is
being
an
in the
achievement.
Champions League is more of an achievement, but the barriers to entry have been lowered so far that getting into Europe isn't necessarily achievement. We've discussed it about the Brazilian league, how, you know, the top 12, 13 sides go into continental competitions, and then the bottom 5 or 6 are in a relegation battle, and then there's about 3 spots in the middle of the league that are genuinely don't mean anything if you finish there. So the barrier to getting into a continental campaign in Brazil is so low that actually it's not impressive to get there. It doesn't mean as much. And I think we're getting, not at that point yet, but if you have 7 English sides in Champions League and then another, 4 sides going into Conference League and Europa League, etc., we're getting to that point where you're like, getting into Europe isn't that difficult, particularly compared to what it used to be. It used to be an honour to go and represent your nation, your league in the Champions League. And now it's become, if 7 spots are there, you'd hope. I mean, it's more damning on sides like Tottenham, Manchester United, etc. if they don't get there, because people go, well, you should be there. You know, we've got a lot of space to fit you in here and you still can't get there. So it's still fantastic for Forest and Bournemouth, but 10 years...
the barrier's been
ago,
lowered for sure, Ollie. I mean, look, it would be, if Forest, they're sat 3rd in the Premier League table, Bournemouth, I mean, it's very on. If you look at the form of, Chelsea, very patchy, Newcastle patchy, City, I think, are going to finish in the top 5 just because they found a little bit more form recently. It still would be achievement, but I take the point. I mean, 5 sides to get in the Champions League. And the possibility, I mean, I think English clubs are almost certainly going to have 5 sides, but I mean, Spurs could easily win the Europa League, I think. And then you got 6 sides in the Champions League next year. It's pretty ridiculous, but it is what it is. Okay.
The most embarrassing thing, just quickly, we do have to mention Brighton hammering Chelsea after Chelsea have paid so much money to Brighton over the years. It was a very good point raised by Joe Cole on the Saturday morning, but yeah, over $250 million Chelsea have paid for players and managers from that club, and Brighton still put them to the sword in the Premier League. I mean, it's a wonderful story. Brighton are another one of those sides that you can just hold hope for in English football, who keep finding a way to it. They're like the Atalanta of English football, I think. They just keep finding a way to adapt and bring new people in and just keep the success rolling. They just need to have one manager there for the full period, and you're looking at an Atalanta-esque story.